All right. So we've been in these core values the past 2 weeks. There are 7 total. And so this will take us through the summer, this series on the core values. And as Pastor John and Pastor Jason and myself were talking about these and working through each core value, the one thing that came to mind, and Pastor John made this statement and he made it a couple weeks ago, is that when we truly believe in something, when we are passionate about something, we live in such a way that it is so. So when we think about the core value that lost people matter to God, do we live in such a way that it is so? Personally or as a church? The second core value, prayer is the primary work of God's people. Do we live in such a way that it is so? That prayer is super significant in the life of the Christ follower and the work that God wants to do around the world. As a matter of fact, can we even ask ourselves this question as a church? Do these core values, what's the word I'm looking for? Reflect. Do the core values reflect who we are as a church? Do these core values reflect who we are personally? So does the statement, lost people matter to God, does that reflect who you are as a Christ follower? In your interactions with people out in the community? Prayer being the primary work of God's people, is that a reflection of who you are as a Christ follower? Seeking the Lord, asking Him for direction, for wisdom. So this morning we're going to dig into the third core value. Everything we have belongs to God. Everything we have belongs to God, and we are His stewards. Now we think about that word steward. What's the thing that comes to your mind that you are to be a good steward of? This is interactive. Money, right? We are called to be good stewards of our finances. And to be a good steward of your finances, that you're to spend it wisely, you're not to gamble with it, and you're to invest it in a positive way, in a way that exalts the Lord. That's being a good steward of your finances. In reality, it all belongs to Him anyway, right? We read a story in the Bible, Luke chapter 21, of a poor widow. Jesus is standing by in the temple and He's watching all these people come up and they're giving their offering and putting it in the temple offering plate. And He notices this poor widow and she walks up and she puts in 2 small copper coins. Everything we have belongs to God. Great or small in the value that society puts on it, it doesn't matter. It all belongs to Him. And Jesus recognizes that this woman coming with 2 small copper coins and putting it in an offering plate was a big deal for her. And so He says, I see all these people giving out of their wealth, but this woman gives out of her poverty. And so therefore, out of her poverty and she giving, it's noted that it's a bigger deal for her because she gave out of her poverty. What else are we to be good stewards of? Our possessions. We have things. You're wearing them. God has blessed us with possessions. And no matter how great or small it is, God can use it to bring Him glory. God can use it to draw people in. God can use it to go out and find lost people. Now, we're wearing some of our possessions. I have a disclaimer. My wife said to me this morning when she walked into church, you left the house and I did not get to inspect your attire. So if my shoes are too bright for you, I'm sorry. I could slip them off and hide them behind the table and wear my socks. But what we have, God can use to reach the lost because they matter to Him. Another way that we need to be good stewards is our gifts and our talents. God has equipped, God has put in you an ability, a passion, a desire, whatever that is. Maybe you're really awesome at drawing stick figures. Maybe you're really awesome at playing the guitar. Maybe you're really awesome at teaching kids about God's word. Maybe you're really awesome at sitting up in a sound booth and running sound and making me sound like Chris Tomlin. We are all equipped. We are all given different gifts and different talents. But it's the same Spirit, it's the same Lord, and it's the same God. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. So this morning, as we take these three things of being stewardship of our finances and being good stewards of our possessions and being good stewards of the gifts and the talents that God has blessed us with, may we recognize that we are more than just. God has blessed us to be and to do more than to just not. And in fact, you may not even recognize it now, but just like the video of the florist, you have, you can, and you will make a difference in somebody's life. You have been equipped by the Lord God Almighty to make a difference in somebody's life. And we need to be good stewards of that. So this morning, we're going to turn to John chapter 6. And as you're turning there, I'll give you kind of a quick getting up to it. We read an awesome account of a miracle that Jesus does. It's an awesome account. It's fantastic. That was my Donald Trump impersonation. One person got it. Thank you. We read this awesome account of a miracle that Jesus performs. We also understand at this point, Jesus has just crossed over the Sea of Galilee and he's on the beach side and a multitude of people are starting to come around. They're starting to gather around him. Now, Passover is coming up to this point. Passover, if you're not familiar with it, found in Exodus chapter 12, is when God said to the Israelites who were still in captivity in Egypt, he said to them, you need to go out and you need to kill the firstborn lamb. And you need to take the blood and you need to spread it over your doorpost. And in that night, as the Spirit of God is going to run through the town, and if I don't see blood on the doorpost, every firstborn male, whether it be a human or an animal, will die. And so the Israelites, out of obedience to that, went out, found the firstborn lamb, killed it, put the blood over the doorpost, and the Spirit of God passed over their doorpost. So there's a little history lesson for you. It's a celebration for the Israelites because shortly after that, through a series of events, they were released from captivity. Pharaoh said, get out of here. And they fled. They left. Passover is also called the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, which means they ate bread without leaven in it. Basically, they had cookie or crackers instead of bread with their meal. And for 7 days, they eat bread that is unleavened. So that's the Passover. So people are gathering. They're on this journey. Passover is coming up. And we start to hear about some hangry people. There weren't Snicker bars to hand out in the crowd to kind of get people to change their attitudes a little bit. And so there was a need that was called out. People were getting hungry. Jesus sees this multitude gathering, and he gives some instructions to the disciples. Now, as we get into this, I want you to walk away with three things today. Three things. Number one, to be ready. Be ready. Be ready to step up. If God is speaking to you, if God is calling you into something, be ready to step up. The second thing, be prepared. Be prepared to make a sacrifice. Because when you step up, that means something else has to be put off to the side. And in being a good steward, it's probably a wise thing, whatever that is, to be put off to the side. So be prepared to make a sacrifice. And then be willing to serve. Don't just step up and make a sacrifice and then just go sit around somewhere. Be willing to serve. Be willing to get into the action. So be ready, be prepared, and be willing. So here we go. John chapter 6. beginning with verse 8. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? So here Jesus has put out this need. We need to feed these people. And the disciples are freaking out. That would take 8 months' wages to feed all these people. And even if we had the money, where in the world, what town would we be able to go to find enough food to feed all these people? And so Jesus tells them, you need to feed them. And they're like trying to figure it out. And so then Andrew brings up this young boy. And so Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now you got to wonder when the disciples are standing there with Jesus and he starts to speak, earth-shattering things usually happen around Jesus. They're so amazing, so mind-blowing. And so Jesus says, have the people sit down. So I'm imagining that the disciples are on the edge of their seat. How in the world is this going to happen? So Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and the men sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. And he did the same with the fish. And when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted. So here we are. Passover is coming. People are starting to get hungry. Jesus is noticing the restlessness that's going on among the crowd. The disciples are freaking out. How in the world are we going to feed all these people? But then the young boy appears with his 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish. Now, by the tone of this, and maybe it's the way I'm reading it, but when it says that Andrew brings up this boy, I'm kind of seeing Andrew kind of excited. Like, look, I found a boy and he's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. Meanwhile, I'm imagining the other disciples standing there next to Jesus and looking at Andrew and going, and? Like, that's good for a family? There's like 2,500 other families hanging out here. So there's kind of like this in my head, just like, oh, how are we going to do this? We can't go out and ask everybody to give all their food. And if they had food, then why would we need to feed them? What in the world? How are we going to fix this? So this boy shows up with these 5 loaves and these 2 fish. Now, I didn't exhaust every resource out there, but I tried to do a little research on this kid. Who was he? Where did he come from? What was he doing there? And there's not much to say. There's not much to read. We can identify this boy as potentially coming from a not wealthy family. 5 loaves and 2 fish, kind of a standard meal for a modest, humble family. We can also understand that, or the questions I have is, where was he in this crowd? Where was he sitting when he heard this need come up? Were his parents with him? Did they say, son, go take our food up to the Lord Jesus? What did they know about Jesus? Like, what was he going to do with our 5 loaves and 2 fish? They have no idea. But there was a need presented, and they went, and he was ready. He stepped up. 5 loaves and 2 fish. The situation isn't their social class, how much money they make, or anything like that. That's not the focus. It's a part of it. But the focus is that they were willing to step up. This boy, how intimidating to walk up to these disciples and this Jesus that a ton of people have come to hear speak and to potentially see him do something really cool. How intimidating for a little boy to come up with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Here, Jesus, can you use this? But he did. He was ready and he stepped up. And honestly, I don't think that Andrew went out into the crowd looking for food to gather. I mean, maybe. But I think this boy maybe started to make the approach. Started to realize that there was a need that needed to be met. And he had something to offer. What about the cost? What was the cost to this boy? What was the cost to his family to let go of their food? Back in 2007, 2008, Jen and I had the opportunity to go down to Haiti. We went down to Cap Haitien, which is on the northern end of the country of Haiti. And we were there. We had a specific project that we were there with a team from the Fort Myers Church to do. And so we go down to Haiti, and we had a day off toward the end of our week there. And so the mission coordinator down in Haiti took us to a resort. It's not a bad place, but it was a place for us to go, and we sat on the beach and overlooked the water. Now, this wasn't like your traditional beach with the nice white sand that goes right into the water. Nope. This was a crushed rock kind of beach, and then there were big boulder rocks that went down into the water. So if you went down in the water, you ran the risk of slipping on the rocks and getting hurt really bad. And so there were two younger students that thought they would be crazy, and they went and got in the water, and blessings on them. But I was just going to stay back and not try to get myself hurt. So I'm sitting on the beach, and I look out in the water about 200 yards out into the water, and I see this kind of makeshift fishing boat, and there are a handful of kids in there, Haitian kids, 5, 6 years old maybe. They're in the, or not 5 and 6, 5th or 6th grade age-ish kind of thing, and they're out there, and they're fishing. There's a couple of them in the boat, and then there's a couple of these boys that are in the water. And the ones in the boat are casting the net out, and then the ones that are in the water are like straightening the net out in the water so that it would sink straight down and potentially catch fish. Now, I couldn't tell every time they pulled the net up if they were actually catching fish or not, but what I could tell is that it was hard work. Now, in the luxury of sitting on the beach in a nice comfortable chair, I sat for 1 hour and observed these boys and the work that they were putting into catching these fish. I have no idea what the purpose was. Maybe they were catching it for their family to have food. Maybe they were catching it to sell at some local market or whatever. I have no idea. I do know that it was a lot of hard work. Treading water in the ocean when there's waves is a lot of hard work. Just trying to stay still in the water. Much less trying to cast the net out, spread it out, hoping to catch some fish. So I think about this boy that walks up with his 2 small fish and the work that went into him being able to catch them. Maybe he had some kind of pole with a line and some kind of hook. I doubt it. I'm imagining him being like these boys down in Haiti, out in the water with his casting net, and he's trying to spread the net out to go down to catch fish, and he comes up with 2 small fish. Now, to him who worked really hard to get those fish, that was awesome. He was probably pretty excited. He and his dad maybe high-fiving, son, good job. You went out there, you got those fish. Thank you so much. We're going to have a great meal tonight. Mom's making bread. It's going to be great. We're actually going to go listen to this Jesus guy talk, and it's just going to be a good family time. So what was the cost of this family? Them offering this bread and the fish. They were letting go of probably something very valuable to them. It was a huge sacrifice if you think about it. And in the back of their minds, they're thinking, we may not actually get to eat this tonight. There's a need and somebody else needs to have something to eat and we need to give it. They're sacrificing their food. They're letting go of their meal for the day probably. But they were prepared. They were prepared to make the sacrifice. And so Jesus receives his food and he tells the people to sit down. And then he breaks the bread and he divides up the fish and he spreads it out and everyone eats all as much as they wanted. And then it says in verse 12, when they had all had enough to eat, Then he said to his disciples, gather up. Don't let anything go to waste. What an amazing miracle. And to think this young boy probably walked up there thinking, I'm not going to eat today. And wait a minute, there's 12 basketfuls left over. And 5,000 plus people, because there were women and obviously children in this crowd that were eating. Man, what a thing that he got to actually experience that. He actually got to stand there next to Jesus and watch him do his thing. You imagine him running back to his parents. Did you see that? Did you see that? His mom and his dad like, yeah, we're full, man. Come sit and have something to eat. I mean, what an amazing miracle. All because this boy made a major sacrifice. All because they responded to a need. You're blessing his glory. As we serve others while living in a culture that says, give me, that's a major contradiction. You imagine a mass movement of people that decide we want to go serve and we don't want anything in return. How that messes with our society's mind. Wait a minute, you want to do something without any kind of return for it? Like, no, we need to pay you back. We need to do something for you. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. Now listen, hear me on this. The Christ follower is not called to a prosperity gospel. The Christian is not called to do for others in order to receive. You are not called to serve and to have somebody come and serve you as a repayment. That's not how it works. Our faith is not based on our works. If our faith was based on our works, who determines its value? So when you serve, when you give, when you share, you do it out of a love for Christ and a love for your neighbor. And you do it not hoping to get anything back. If you have an attitude or an expectation to receive because you give, you're not really giving. If you have an attitude of an expectation to be served because you're serving, you're not really serving. So the Lord does not call us to give to yet receive. Now, it's God's prerogative that he's going to bless according to what he feels is right for you and for me. But that's his prerogative. That's not ours. We should have no expectation to receive anything but joy from the Lord. So this morning, how are you serving? What are you gifted at? What do you need to sacrifice in order to serve? What do you need to be ready to do to step up? We have needs. There are needs in our community. We have a lot of ministries in our community that could use volunteers to help with stuff. Maybe you can't physically do anything. We have a lot of ministries in our community that could use people to donate things or to even help financially. What do you need to do to step up? What do you need to be willing to sacrifice? How can you serve? So this morning we're going to sing a closing song together. And as we sing, I want to encourage you to consider a way that you could be more involved in the kingdom work. Understand that everything we have belongs to God and we are his mere stewards. The blessings we have are from God, they belong to God, and we are to be good stewards of what he has blessed us with. I invite you to stand. The young boy's readiness to step up, to serve in a capacity and in a way that would bless others, that would bless his neighbors. The poor widow that was prepared to give everything she had to honor the Lord, to be obedient to the call that was on her life. Maybe for the men that were given the money. One went out and invested well and was able to bring back for his boss, and another went out and invested okay and he brought back for his boss, but the one that hid had nothing to give back. Don't hide what the Lord has blessed you. Don't go bury it in a hole somewhere. Don't let it go to waste. God has equipped you, and He wants to empower you through His Holy Spirit to serve Him, our great King. So are you willing to serve? Are you ready to step up? Are you prepared to make a sacrifice in order to do what God is calling you to do? So let's sing this song together. If you want to come to the altar or the forward here at the stage and you want to kneel down and you want to pray before the Lord and ask the Lord to speak to you, to inspire you, to challenge you to step up, to be prepared to make a sacrifice and be ready to serve, pray that to the Lord. Listen to His voice as He speaks to you.